I'm going to call to order the workshop for September 8, 2015. So I have roll call, please.
Councilperson Smith. Councilperson Sestovny. Councilperson Webb.
Here.
Council President Gill.
Here.
Councilperson Julius.
Here.
Councilperson Samuel.
Here.
Let the record reflect 6 council members present, 3 absent.
And I did get a notification from Tony. He's just running a few minutes behind. So can I have approval of the agenda?
No changes. Motion to approve.
Got him. Do I have a second? Okay, a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I have an extra agenda.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
No.
What? What?
I don't hear much.
This is one for tonight.
Oh, okay. So our
Thank you,
first
sir.
one is, we're going to discuss the 10th Street Widening Project, and as you all know, we had been stating from the very beginning that we like to approve this in phases, and I wanted to read out of the minutes just why we've got both INDOT and KIPDA here to make sure that I didn't state something wrong. So it said that Council President Gill stated it's a wonderful project and everyone wants to move forward. However, the council has been clear in the past that the project will be approved in phases. The first 2 phases is acquisition and utilities that has been approved. The council's plan is to wait to approve the construction phase of the project in order to be better in line with the KIPDA timeline, which has the construction bids beginning in October 2016. Correct? Letting. Okay. There is concern that if the council approves the construction phase ahead of the initial plan, the project could potentially lose up to $2.4 million funded by KIPDA. The funding will become available in the calendar year 2016, which would be in the month of July. 80% of this amount will be available in the year 2016 and be distributed in the year 2017.
Fiscal year 2017,
Okay.
calendar year 16.
Okay.
Which is available 1 October
Okay.
16.
But it said that, then it went on to say, Councilperson Julius stated that he had spoken with INDOT and that it would be no matter in February, March of next year, which is 2016, there would be additional funding for this project. So I guess that it's kind of what we stated, and then I think Andy had some concerns that the utilities had some concerns, so.
Project scheduled to let October of 16. That's the current schedule,
Right.
which is fiscal year 2017.
Federal fiscal.
Federal fiscal year 17.
Okay.
It's actually calendar year. It's kind of confusing.
And it's a little more, you mentioned 2.4 and then 80% of that. It's actually 2.6, and that's the full federal amount. That would have to be matched with 20%.
2.6. Could you hear what he was?
Federal.
Well, I'll call them up.
Also, you may want to know when Senator
2.807.
Grooms.
2.8, a little more than 2.8.
Okay.
And
And
you
then,
get that full amount, not 80% of that.
okay. And then I just seen that Senator Ron Grooms have just joined us. Thank you for attending, sir. Appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Okay. So those were kind of things that I stated was kind of concerned about, that, you know, we wanted to do it in phases to kind of make sure that we're in line, that we can get the most possible funding that we could get. So.
Absolutely. So I put this chart together a few years ago, and I've updated it a couple of months ago. I think that's the 2.8 that we've got under construction. If you look, we've divided the project up into phases. You've got a design phase, a right-of-way phase. We've got money in there scheduled for utilities. There's a construction phase, and then there's inspection. The blue I've got labeled as KIPDA. If you look on the legend on the right, that is money that we are getting through KIPDA, through INDOT. So we've got $1.2 million in design funds that we matched. The red is our match. So if you look under the design column, we got $1.227 million. We matched $306,000 of that. The contract was actually for a little bit. There we go. The contract was actually for 1.66. So on top of our 20% match, we paid 100% out of pocket at 129. Does that make sense? I know the KIPDA funding can be, and the state funding can be a little difficult, so I've tried to break it down as simply as I can. The right-of-way is the same way. We have $2.53 million in funding from KIPDA from INDOT through KIPDA. For right-of-way, the 20% match for that is $634,000, and we are paying out of pocket approximately 2.3 over and above that at a 100% to purchase all of the right-of-way. There's going to be some utility relocation. I've got this marked as utilities. It is not utilities. It is for the rail crossing. There's going to be a rail crossing that has to be upgraded. Yes. We'll be paying for that. We pay for the upgrade, and then they still continue to maintain as they do now. So for the construction phase that we're talking about, I believe we have $2.807 million in funding coming from INDOT through KIPDA. We have a $700,000 match. That's the 20% match to get the 2.8. And then the projected total cost for the construction phase is around $11 million. So the green that you see on top of that at 7.3 is the 100% out-of-pocket local. And there's an inspection component. We'll have to hire a certified consultant for inspection, and there's an estimate that we've used for that. That's all out of pocket.
Andy, does KIPDA or INDOT or any of them, as far as the inspection, do we have a third party come in, or it seems like some of our projects, our engineers kind of inspect themselves?
All federal aid projects require, certified inspector. And we have Larry Cheney with KIPDA here. He's the director of transportation for KIPDA. We have Kathy Eaton, LPA director, for INDOT, and Jeff James is director of communications for Duke. What is it?
Account executive.
Okay. Account executive with Duke Energy.
Okay, good. Kathy, would you mind, or either one of you all, just taking us through the timeline? It's my understanding we're in 80% of the property acquisition phase. We're 80%. I know the final piece, we're talking with our appointments to redevelopment, that those final ones is going to take a little bit longer because there's a lot of legal things that have to be taken with it.
There are some going through a condemnation. There are some that we're finalizing some purchase agreements on. We're 80-85%.
How close are we going to be to that number?
That number was updated just a couple of months ago. I think you saw this a couple of months ago, Dennis.
I didn't know if it
That's
had
when I did
changed.
this. I haven't changed it since then.
And can you send that out to all of us?
I think you have it, but I can resend it.
Okay.
I believe I sent this to Vicki after the last meeting.
Oh, I
No.
don't have it.
Okay, I can get it to you.
Andy, I got a question. On the, under the construction phase, the 7.2 that's unmatched at this point, or retired, it's local dollars.
Correct.
Is it based on the timeline of the schedule of being out a few years for the construction and all as far as completion? Are there opportunities to get additional dollars? I was thinking that potentially we could get additional dollars. My terminology will not be the right terminology, but if other, for example, maybe through the state, if projects are not completed and there's money left on the table, then we could potentially apply for and secure some of those monies that are on the table. That may be a question for Kathy, but the bigger picture question, are there opportunities for us to get some additional dollars for that?
I'd be glad to answer that question, but I think it was probably better for Larry.
Can I
and
tag
Kathy.
something on to Nathan?
Yes.
At one point, I know when we spoke with Kathy, there was a possible opportunity if we broke it into two phases too.
To get additional funding?
Because I think it would take longer to do the project, and then you may open another door, like Nathan was saying.
Okay.
That there might be an opportunity to get more funding if you broke it into two phases.
On down the, and did a second phase
Well,
later in
instead
time?
of doing it all at once, the whole, however long that is, breaking it into two phases.
Okay.
Kathy,
But-
can you?
I think a lot of that too was we questioned the amount of TIP dollars we're spending, and if we break it into two phases, we could actually possibly look at other projects too,
Exactly.
because we wouldn't spend all of our TIPs, and then we could take smaller pieces of other projects. but not stop this project, just
Right.
break it into 2 phases because of the amount of TIF dollars we're going to have involved.
Whether you phase it or not, I mean, that's obviously your decision. I administer the local funds. These are funds, federal funds that go to local communities that fall outside the urbanized area. Okay, so you guys fall within the urbanized area of KIPDA. So your funds come from KIPDA, which are, it's a distribution formula that INDOT has, and they give dedicated funds to each MPO that is in an urbanized area. What we did have was, we worked with every MPO to come up with a 5-year plan, a spending plan. This is every MPO throughout the state.
Now, what do you mean by MPO?
Metropolitan Planning Organization. So like KIPDA is yours down here, but there are several of them throughout Indiana. To get a 5-year spending plan so that we knew where we were coming from as far as funds, because there are some of the local rural funds mixed in with some of their, the KIPDA funds for this instance. So the 5-year plan was under Commissioner Browning, who was our commissioner prior to Commissioner Hendrickson taking over a few months ago. She has since changed her philosophy on that each MPO obviously should have a 4 to 5 year plan, but that is strictly their plan, because we have implemented a use it or lose it type scenario. The way we all did business in the past, the MPOs were allowed to kind of accumulate some of those funds, which created a huge liability to INDOT. So each MPO now realizes that they have to use the funds they have, or they lose them. There's also these back balances of funds that each MPO has. And so what we are doing now is every February we are revisiting their plan. So what it does is it doesn't tie them down to a solid 5-year plan, because we don't want them to lose their funds. So every February we are giving them the opportunity to reevaluate their plan and then come back to INDOT and say, this is what we want to do for fiscal year 17. Now, from my standpoint, and Larry can speak on behalf of KIPDA, there are a lot of local projects that move in and they move out for various reasons. Condemnations, design issues, contaminated soil, archaeological, whatever. They all move in and they move out. So even today, KIPDA has a plan for the next 4 to 5 years, but we will give them the opportunity in February to relook at that plan with their local government entities, whether it's Jeff, New Albany, Clarksville, Clark County, whoever. So come February, they will have to look at their plan and decide, is this a solid plan, because obviously they don't want to lose their funds. So that's kind of how the funding is working. Does that explain to you?
So if come February, if they sit down, if you've got one of the municipalities that are involved that, let's say that that they use it or lose it, if they don't, is that potential there for more money to be?
That is strictly.
Yes,
yeah.
it could be.
Okay.
We have, as Kathy said, a 5-year plan out to 2019. We have specific projects generally out through 2018, because we have another document that only goes out to 18, but the money is spoken for out to 2018, basically down to the dollar. This project has construction dollars assigned to buy several different things. Originally, construction came into the plan, it was completely Jeffersonville, originally. As we put the plan together and we saw that there were, first of all, more dollars available for right-of-way, because you were ready to go, the project was designed. So we had the opportunity when we put that plan together to give you more right-of-way dollars than we'd anticipated that were in the original plan. So we increased that, I guess we increased it twice.
I believe we increased the right-of-way a couple of times.
Toward the end of the year.
And construction a couple of times.
And construction. But the right-of-way increases were a result of when we put the plan together, we saw that there was no way to spend those dollars at that particular moment, and we had to spend them for 15. They had to be spent or we were going to lose them completely. So Jeff had a project that was underway, and we put more right-of-way dollars in there. Currently, in 2017, you've got the 2.8 What happens there is if you don't use it in 2017, you theoretically go to the back of the line. If it's not obligated in 2017, you won't necessarily get it in 2018. Other projects may come in and take its place, just like you've taken the place of some projects with that right-of-way money. There's a possibility that projects will, first of all, slip schedule, or possibly once the big project across the river gets built, concrete's cheaper and your projects come in lower than the estimate. So there could be some dollars left. One of the things that we had too that we added in right-of-way dollars, at the end of the year, INDOT goes back and does a calculation of what the obligation can be, what the obligation ceiling can be for a particular fiscal year. And if that's more than they originally estimated, then we get a little bit more, and we did. So we added that at the last minute so we could spend that in 15. In answer to your question, there is a possibility, but there's no guarantee there could be more money.
Well, but I guess on what you're saying, and I'm trying to think this through, if we started the project but we broke it into 2 phases, how does that impact this, this column here as far as your initial funding, this commitment?
Depends on how you split the federal dollars.
Uh-huh.
If you split it into sections, which looks like with that amount of money you could easily,
Okay.
depends on where you use your federal dollars. If you say you wanted to use all of them on the first section, you're already there. It's in the plan. But if you wanted to split the federal dollars, that creates another problem in another year. I don't know what we would do with that. But if your first project used all the federal dollars, that's already there for 17.
But would that open the opportunity for the following year to receive more? I guess is where I'm going.
No, not if you used all the federal dollars.
Okay, cool. So there's only so many federal dollars
Yes.
for the project.
We get roughly 2.2 per year in this particular, the surface transportation program.
And those 2.2 for the next 4 to 5 years, depending on which document you look at, are already spoken for.
They're programmed in our
Program.
in our transportation improvement program.
Okay.
Not just the transportation,
Oh, the STP fund.
Just the STP. Does that make
So
sense about the?
there's no
opportunity?
definite yes or, I mean, there's no yes or no to it. It just all depends on how these projects move in and move out, and they do. I mean, some come in over budget, some are under budget, so it's this constant managing the checkbook type issue.
And with the philosophy that INDOT has currently, that if you don't use it in that particular year, you may lose it completely, we would, if a project slipped, we would go whatever direction we could to spend the money. And you've overmatched your project, so you're a logical candidate. Again, that's no guarantee, but if money became available, you would be at the top of the list, I would think.
It would be a fast way they could obligate those funds.
We have 3 different hoops that you'd have to jump through at the local level. We have a working group that's composed of technical committee members. Then the policy committee have to approve it, and then we provide that to INDOT.
I think you made a good point, too. Several projects that we started, and one of them comes to mind was we built a big soccer complex. And when we put this complex out to build or bid, because of the bridge construction, you couldn't even get a dump truck. So the price of the project went through the roof. So we had to really scale back on our project to come within the money that we wanted to spend. But as that ramps down, then you might be able, you're going to be able to do more with the money you have, simply because, like I said, dirt was a commodity. If you had dirt, it was for sale. Before, you couldn't give dirt away. So dirt was a commodity. Dump trucks were coming from Seymour, Columbus, Indiana. They had.
And so is labor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, well,
A lot
labor's all over
of
the country.
people, have moved to the community for the project.
Right.
They may stay if there's more work.
And New Albany just had the McDonald Lane project just let last week, and it was over the estimates as well. So it's,
And I
there,
think
But less over than they have been recently.
Yeah, but it was
10%
still,
or so, but
yeah.
it's still over.
But you spoke, as this ramps down, which in the next year or two it's going to ramp down, then basically, hopefully, we're going to get back where the engineers or whomever that bids these projects we're going to be more on the mark because we're not going to have to bring dump trucks all the way down from Columbus, Indiana, which is going to cost.
We can hope so, but you know, whatever the market bears, if the prices stay up and people pays it, you know, if they pay that, then it's going to stay there. But I would expect the material cost at least to go down.
I have a couple questions, if I can. As I look at what was matching funds, the KIPDA funds, and what's unmatched, it seems like on a percentage basis, I mean, the design work, a lot of it was KIPDA, like maybe 85%, and then 45% of right-of-way and about 35% or so of construction. Is that the percentage of the different types of work? Is the size of the project or the type of the project a factor in the percentage, or is it just the money that's available at the time?
It's more a factor of the money available. You can see those are around $2 million, which is about a little bit over a year's allotment on each one of those. So it's more a factor of how much money is available. And the willingness of Jeffersonville to build the project with their own money.
And looking at the construction phase, if we were to break that, just say in half, just say we're going to do the first half today, or you know, next year, would we have access to the $2.8 million just to do the first phase? Okay, and then we could kind of reapply to get the second half done, and with possibility of more money coming down a year or two down.
No guarantee that you would get it necessarily in a timely fashion, but you do have the 2.8 is there.
It's not required to do the complete project as originally thought out or designed.
It wouldn't have to be. I mean, there is a commitment to the public and through the program that you're going to build the project from here to here.
Right.
But as money becomes available, if that's all the money you have to do it, then
You can change.
Yeah, we understand the commitment to complete it. I guess we're just trying to maximize the matching, and you know, we're trying to weigh time versus money, or the possibility of money.
Can I ask a question in view of that, Larry? There's a project description that's put out that goes with this project when it goes through the KIPDA process. That description, I'm assuming, would have to change.
Yes, it would
It'd
have
have
to
to
be
be
split into
modified.
sections.
Okay.
With that schedule, and that would be, it would have to go through the planning process. So
Would that open this funding up for review? If we change the scope of that project?
shouldn't.
Okay.
Not as long as you still have that other portion of the project in the plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Ed hit the nail on the head. We hope we're asking the right questions.
That's fine.
Because for us, especially me being in private business, it's very complicated to figure out what's going on. And what Ed had said, I think, is what we've been asking all along to the powers that be, is how do we maximize this funding? Because as Mike said, even, you know, if we spend $8 million or $9 million of our cash out of our TIFs, then we kind of cripple some of our other projects. And, you know, if that's the way it's got to be, that's the way it's got to be. But, you know, we want to make sure that we're asking the right questions and that we're not out in left field somewhere. And we trust Andy impeccably.
Yeah,
we really do.
That's what we're here, just to help you and understand it better. What's your tip out to, 2018? So their tip has to be fiscally constrained through 2018. So anything out past 2018, they would probably make a call, and correct me if I'm wrong, they would make a call for projects, and then you would compete locally with the other government entities in this area.
And it would likely be, the way it stands right now, if no one pulls a project completely out of the program, we are actually promised money out to 2019. We've got over $2 million, a year's worth of money. It's not obligated yet, but it's programmed in the 5-year plan to go to the heavy haul road.
Mhm.
So there's a year's worth of the funding going toward that.
You mean the total dollar amount?
Pardon?
You say
Yes.
a year's worth of
The 2.2.
is committed to the heavy haul?
Let me ask you another question. If say we had a time horizon of, just say 10 years, just for argument's sake, and we had 10 years that we wanted to make sure this project was complete within 10 years, in your opinion, what would be the best scenario, the best action to take to maximize our matching funds? I mean, if you were sitting in these chairs and you said, okay, we want to complete this project within 10 years, but we wanted to maximize a possibility of receiving funds, what would you do?
We have several different opportunities if you're looking at an 8 or 10 year horizon. Obviously, right now, we're out to 2019, so there's the first 4 years is gone. As we move forward, your project is already in the long-range plan. It's already under construction in this plan. We could add, at the end of next year, we'll have another transportation improvement program that'll go out probably to 21, maybe. At least 20, maybe 21. Just with Andy or whomever you send to the table keeps that on the table, keeps it in the plan at every opportunity, offers that, some portion of that or all of that as a project to be funded. That's really all we can do.
So if I understand what you're saying is follow through on what we have today, the 2.8, but then kind of keep requesting the second phases or third phases, or
Knocking on the door.
keep knocking on it until...
Well, I think you want to
Strip it away?
continue to, you want to complete this project. You want to buy the right of way. You want to get everything complete, so you're shovel ready, basically. So as soon as any funding would become available, you're ready to go, unlike somebody who may have a new project. If somebody falls out, you know, you may only get 2 million, but maybe that's another 0.3 of a mile. I don't know. But, you know, you don't want to stop development on this project. You want this to be completely shovel-ready. And then if you decide to phase it, then that's obviously your choice to do that. But you would be ready if any funds fell out of KIPDA.
And that would be, you know, going ahead, pursuing, buying your right-of-way, moving your utilities, where you could at any point just say, okay, I've got plans, it's clear, all we have to do is just let it to contract and we're ready to go.
Yeah.
There are other funding sources too. There's safety money, if you could find some safety component of the project. There's a congestion mitigation air quality money that could be the same thing towards signal systems or sidewalks or something like that. And there's also transportation alternative program money. And we don't get a lot of those. They're about $600,000 to $800,000 a year, but that's another source of funding that you might look at as we move forward with it. And again, those are spoken for up through 18 as well right now.
Your transportation alternative funds are basically things like sidewalks, bringing them up to ADA compliance. They could be trails, they could be amenities. Yeah, the greenway or anything like that.
Are these funds fall in line with the other funds that if somebody drops out, then it goes to other municipalities?
Yes, they're also part of the 5-year plan. So even though they are designated up through 18, if someone drops the ball, then there's the opportunity to step in.
How often does that happen as far as somebody dropping out? I mean, is that every year a certain portion of that
This
drops?
year it hasn't happened because we've been really, really hard on people. And the knee-jerk reaction was, oh, we're never going to be able to build this. All the money's going to go away. That's softened a little bit, but we don't want it to. We want to hold that line and say, you say your project's ready, then follow through and build it. Spend the money there rather than hold the money and keep someone else from moving forward.
And I think it also depends on the cost of, like, the project that they just let, McDonald Lane, was a very large dollar project. So that's going to consume most of theirs. Where maybe next year if they've got 10 projects, but they're little smaller projects, and I don't know what's in their tip, but, you know.
And we won't be able to do that anymore if we can't carry funds over.
Right, that's
You
what
just
I was
gotta-
saying in reference to Ed's question too. When you see 2.5 up there for right-of-way in 1 year and construction of 2.8 in 1 year, that came from a different philosophy of putting this program together. So with the current philosophy, the most any of that number could be in any given year would be 2.2. Is that right, Kathy?
Well,
Well, it depends on if it's safety eligible or
Yeah, if you get
TAP.
all
or-
If you pulled some of the other
Yeah,
other
if it
ones
was
in, but there's a you can't carry. I've had some of you ask me, can't we carry some funds forward? We've done that in the past. That's not
No.
a
Yeah.
viable option.
They have X amount of dollars they have to spend every year, and that's what they have to spend. And once again, it's like managing your checkbook. I manage the local program, and, you know, that's like $108 million a year. And I have projects move out. And I'm under the same rules they're under. I have to spend it or I lose it. But I have I have a lot more projects than what KIPDA has, obviously, statewide, but it's just a constant pull here, do this, move that. I mean, that's what I do all the time. But they're on a smaller scale than I am. But they have a set amount of dollars they have to use every year, or they use it. Now, once again, they can pull somebody else in, they can move it out, they can do whatever they want, but they have...
So back to Andy's point, again, you've got $7.2 million. The most you could get would be 2.2. So you still have to come up with 5, or split it into 3 sections.
3 bases.
You know,
In any case, you have to get the entire amount for the year for each one of those sections.
I don't know what your maintenance of traffic would be. Andy might be able to tell you too, but
If we're going to split into phases, we need to go back to the consultant and have them redesign
Right.
some transition plans for us.
has there been any new traffic projections with the 2 new bridges about what the traffic is going to increase, decrease in this section of 10th Street?
The volume of traffic?
Huh?
The volume?
Yeah.
The Bridges project has a travel model, which is kind of, I'm going to say this.
Choose your words carefully.
They're going to use East End Bridge. They're not going to be coming down and traveling like they used to, to go to work.
A travel model is a lot of speculation.
Okay.
It's great for a regional look at things, like are people coming in from Oldham County and going through to Floyd County, things like that. When you get down to the street level on our model, it's not good. We have a macro model rather than a micro model. The Bridges project model was born of ours, and then they took it and did other things with it. So I can't really say that theirs is right or it's wrong. It's different.
You have your heavy haul route too, and I'm not sure if that they've done any traffic modeling, have they? Or I'm not aware of
It would
any.
be hard to.
Yeah.
It would be really hard to.
Yeah.
But I have seen projections that were lower for 10th Street. Is that right? Is it true? I don't know. It is a model.
I know some of us feel like it would be lower because, living around here, we know where the traffic is coming from and going to. Right now, they don't have an alternative. If they're downtown, or East End, they're either going to get on 265 or go around, or if they're going to come down 10th Street. And going to Louisville, they're almost going to come down, probably half going to come down 10th Street, the other half's on 265. So when the bridge is built and 265 is connected, then they're going to have a faster option to get to Louisville. So they won't go one of those routes to get to 65 or take 10th Street to go downtown.
Do you think there, and again, it's a land use model too, depending on what the local governments tell us the land's going to be used for in 20 years. So that adjusts the model as well. But do you see any opportunity for people that come to Jeffersonville now from the east part of Jefferson County or Oldham County who come downtown and then come out? Are they going to change completely, do you think? Or do you see no attraction from those people to come across the bridge and in?
I can't imagine them coming across, if they were going to go to our downtown, I cannot imagine them coming across that bridge and going down 62 opposed to 265 or going down 64 or 71 in Louisville and getting right off the bridge in the downtown.
Except for gasoline lottery tickets and a soft drink or a snack.
McDonald's?
They're not stopping.
Where's McDonald's going to
I don't like it.
Go along the river for a river.
But except for them few items, you can watch the traffic, because we live here too. They're like this. They got their mind on, their kids got a softball game or a little kid, in a play or something. They got to get home and so I don't think there's a whole lot of wandering going on except for a few items. And when they leave work, they want to get home.
So you expect the volume to decrease?
I think it will.
That's not a good thing, but it is a thing.
I guess my thing, Kathy, as far as INDOT and KIPDA is concerned, and even with redevelopment, we have Marty here, which is chaperone, that's our appointment to redevelopment. Jeff's right now, we're in line with your timeline. We're progressing right on time. So everything's moving along. But if the council, if we wait till February to, sometime, the first part of next year to approve the construction phase, are we affecting this project in any way? Are we slowing down this project in any way? If we wait till February to approve the construction, we got a whole new council basically that's going to be coming in, and it's kind of.
Well, let me explain a little bit more further about, this is your schedule based upon your quarterly report that Andy, I think, submits. This is saying the right-of-way clear date is not till May 31st of 2016. So what INDOT does, before we award a project or let it to go out for bid, for in this case it would be October, we require all final tracings, all bid documents to be turned in 4 months prior to that. Anything, as long as you're done and everything's turned in within that 4 months, we're good. Now, that doesn't mean that he gets it done sooner. If you all want to move it up, once again, you got to look at price favorability too, because when you start letting projects in July, August, you don't get good price favorability because contractors are usually full for their season. And usually until January, February, do we see better price favorability, just because contractors are finishing up 1 year and they're getting ready to load up the next year. So 4 months prior to this October date that is currently on your schedule is when all right-of-way would have to be clear, utility coordination, railroad coordination, everything would have to be complete. So, what's that, June? Sometime in June. So I don't see a problem with it unless Andy sees something with it.
From a funding standpoint, I think this is the discussion basically that we got into at the last meeting, because we're looking at it from a utility standpoint. On Hamburg Pike, I think we all know that there were construction delays after delays on that. One of the major factors of that delay was utilities. So our goal was to get utilities relocated and out of the way. I believe Indiana is moving to that in your projects, moving utilities first and then doing the construction.
We are, but you still have to have your right-of-way purchased and cleared,
right,
which you can't move utilities onto someone else's property.
Right.
So if your utility right-of-way clear date is close, it can change. This is just an estimate. The end of May.
16.
Yeah,
Right.
You wouldn't get your certification until then. You could start moving your utilities if you wanted to. Right?
Just to point out to you all, we've already amended the TIP plan for phase 1, which includes design,
Acquisition.
right-of-way acquisition, and utility relocation.
But I mean, utility relocation,
That was part of phase 1, though, right? We've already approved that. I guess where we're at is that we're asked now to basically amend the TIP plan again to approve the whole construction of the project, and I guess that's where the council's confused.
I'm not saying that.
Let's get letting us until next year in construction, according to your all schedule for funding us until next year. Why? We're just wondering, why should we approve technically amend TIP plan the construction phase now? We believe we've already approved right-of-way acquisitions already underway, which includes utility relocation. We've already approved that. So I guess that's where we're.
But I mean, the council approving utilities, I don't know that gets us. I mean, the utility relocation at this point is not costing the city anything. The utilities are relocating at their own cost.
Yeah. So why do we want to? Why do we need to amend the TIP plan now?
And that was the request that I brought to you at the time, was that we were getting advised by our consultant that for the utilities to relocate, they'd like to know that we're actually going to do this project. They'd like to know that this project is going to proceed past design and right-of-way, and it's actually going to go to construction.
I'm going to make a comment on that, because that's, to me, that's what really heated things up.
It is. It is. So,
Well, what I don't understand is, that's why I asked for, I forgot what your name, I'm sorry, sir.
Jeff James.
How,
right.
Jeff, can you come up to the podium, please? I guess that's where my confusion was when I first saw this, as president of the council. I saw it on the agenda, and I was talking with Andy, and he said the concern about the utilities, and I do know that when the utility companies, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you know these projects are happening, you all have budgets. I know you budget. I know I talked with Bob Rogie with Vectra, and he says we know it's there. We've done budgeted for it, we've got the funding in place. How is with us purchasing the right-of-way, which, will that be completed probably in May? We'll have design, everything be utility clear. How with us doing the right-of-way, the property acquisition and all that, how is that giving you the signal that don't move your utilities, that we're not moving forward? Are you hesitant to move, or are we, because we're all on a timeline and we're meeting all the timeline according to redevelopment and KIPDA and INDOT, we're meeting all of our earmarks. So I don't understand, I guess that was my question. I don't understand why the utilities are being so apprehensive.
Well, first of all, wasn't at the first meeting, or the other meeting, so I'm not sure exactly what was discussed. But in order for us to proceed, Duke Energy and other utilities, and I'm going to speak for them, unfortunately, they're not here to represent themselves. But
Let me interject real quick. I didn't say that Jeff or Duke or anybody, but I mean, we had a consultant that just said, you may want to get confirmation for them that they can. Jeff never told me that.
Okay, but I was under the
No,
impression
Jeff-
utilities
no.
not wanting,
Our
and that's what
understanding
Matt
was
was.
it wasn't confirmation, because we pulled the trigger on this project.
Yeah.
Okay.
It
We got
wasn't-
$7 million invested in it
Yeah,
already.
yeah, there's no question about the project.
Okay.
Okay, from what I understand, I want you all to jump in here. We was told that if we don't pass these two Falls Landing TIF, and it's in a road TIF, which actually takes the cash and puts to this project, that they would pull out. And we'd say, that was my understanding, and you probably told it to us, and it was like, we didn't, when it's ready to go, we'll pull the trigger. There's not a problem. But we were being pinched in that if we don't commit the money from these two TIFs months ago, that they're going to pull out. Did I say that correctly? Or?
But my understanding from INDOT and KIPDA, as long as we have the right-of-ways purchased, we are, what their term was utility clear, you're set to move your utilities, correct?
we would have to have the right-of-ways purchased. We would have to have the right-of-way cleared. That would be of any structure and tree trimming, okay, for us to get in there and do our work. As long as those things had actually occurred, then we don't have a problem with that. We know you're moving forward because you've got that part allocated.
So it won't make a difference to you if we approve this?
It will make a difference in
February.
phases. If you do it in phases, it would make a difference to us.
Yeah, well, they were just asking those questions because we have like Holman's Lane, we have other projects
Right.
but
Now, if we have it designed, we have everything's on paper right now. All we have to do is pull the trigger in order to proceed. However, if you were to put this in pieces, then into phases, we would just need to know which phase you're going to do, and then we would know how to proceed. Unfortunately, ours is not as fluid as hooking the pipes together in the ground and things like that. Ours is pole line runs over here and runs over here. We've got to make transitions. So when you ask us to do it in phases, it's not going to look very pretty, okay, for that time period between phases. We would prefer to do everything at once. Obviously, we've got the funds allocated, and it would cost us more in phases because we have to remobilize contractors or our people or whatever, and then break it into pieces to do that. So it would cost us more.
Is the utilities going to be paid at 100% local?
That's what we understand. So, no, 100% local.
Oh, they pay for it.
Duke Energy, we're fitting our own bill, so we're paying for we're paying for everything.
So as long as the right-of-way was clear all the way, then
We could
you could
proceed.
move everything. as
Right.
long as
Well, I guess that's my question. If we broke our section up, or our portion, the construction phase into sections, or phases, whatever you want to call it, why wouldn't you all be able to go ahead and move your utilities and we would be shovel ready when we got to that next phase?
Well,
Does that make sense?
it does, but this sounds bad, but if it's done in phases and that phase never comes about, we've invested millions of dollars in this with the anticipation that it's going to happen. I don't have to invest anything, when I say Duke doesn't have to invest anything in that next phase. we could just transition to a point and stop. Very similar to what's happened on 10th Street already, down around, the shopping centers. It's widened, okay? If you're looking at downtown, which we are, then we're not going to be, it just would depend on those areas that we're going to transition to.
To me, that's their business choice.
Sure.
They're going to pay for it one way or the other. If they
Right.
want to do it all at one time and knock it out, or they want to do it in phases.
Yeah.
The availability to do it, the complete utility completion, the move of the utilities is there.
Uh,
I think the city's committed to the project, because any
Right.
federal dollars that they spent today, if they didn't proceed on, would have to be paid back.
Exactly.
Exactly.
We don't plan on doing that.
I mean, I'm not saying,
Right.
that you won't eventually get to it, but just to bring that out to everybody's awareness. That if you didn't-
And we've been on record in multiple public meetings and workshops that, we're committed to this project, so.
And Jeff, you've heard what our, I guess, hold up or, our delay in our minds is this the best way to spend taxpayers' dollars?
Sure.
And we want to be as frugal with that as we can. We want to get the best bang for the buck, just like you guys.
Just like us, exactly.
And, that's why we're having these meetings, and that's why we're probably driving Andy crazy.
Well, I wanted to add a couple of comments. At the last ERC training that I was at, Kathy, I asked this
I
question.
wasn't there, but.
I know, I asked this. INDOT requires that employees of local public agencies, LPA cities, have an ERC, an employee of responsible charge. In order to be labeled that, you have to go to certain training every year. At the last ERC training a couple of months ago, back this summer that I went to, I asked a question about utilities. And what they stated was that it's possible that if utilities relocated at their own expense for a project that we were going to do, and then it did not happen in a certain length of time, it's perfectly legal for them to send us a bill for that.
Right.
That is
And
correct.
I don't want that to happen here.
Nobody wants that to happen.
Right.
We're just asking questions. That was the whole purpose for this
And
workshop.
I think what you're going to find is we're going to be very transparent
Yeah.
in what we already are and what we're trying to do. And I guess what we need to feel comfortable with is the timeline and the funding.
Right.
Pretty simple.
And I think if we get a statement from you all that just says this is our timeline, this is when we anticipate, if it's May of next year to acquire all the property, that's perfectly fine. And then if you're going to truncate this into different phases, then we just need to know when that phases would occur. I heard 10 years, okay, a while ago.
That was just a random number.
I know, that worried me, I'm going to tell you.
I was just
But, because 10 years is a long time, especially for a project like this. So we would have to segment our work order accordingly into those phases. So,
Well, if this project, if we went to the design, we went to right of way, we purchased property and we did everything, and we decided on a construction phase, because that's a $10 million out of our pocket, if we decided to break that into phases, that really should have nothing to do with you. Because we've got the easements, everything's been bought, and and you all can do your thing.
Right.
And then we're going to break it into either two phases or whatever we do, depending upon the money. On the actual road itself has nothing to do with easements and right-of-ways.
to a point, that's correct. If that second phase doesn't occur for some reason, okay, it gets thrown out or whatever, another project gets moved into it, we've already invested that extra number of dollars in that relocation, which I don't have to do, okay? And that's the only issue that we have is Duke spending, I mean, this is a multi-million-dollar project for us, and we're funding it solely out of our pocket,
Is there
okay?
anybody in Duke that thinks we're trying to drag our feet on this project?
I don't think so.
I mean, I don't know.
I mean,
this perception.
why would we go to the expense of designing it? I mean,
That's what I
Same
don't-
here.
so,
Same here, I don't
so-
understand.
no, I'm just
why-
bringing up the
Well,
what
that's why we're
ifs.
having the meeting, to get
Yeah,
everything
and
on the
that's
table.
why I asked the question that if we didn't take action on this year, because it just makes sense, because we have been clear from the very beginning that we would prove things in phases.
Right.
So if we look at February and March, and we don't even have our utility clear and our right-of-way until May of 2016, it's not even going to be let out, as long as we get that 4 months and do it then, I don't see the reason why we have to rush our timeline.
Well, we haven't drug our foot or threw the anchor out yet.
Jeff, how long will it take y'all to do this project?
We're probably looking at 8 months.
8 months.
Now, that's from start to finish. Might be some additional tree trimming we have to do. We might even have to have some additional easements or right-of-ways purchased outside of what you all do, just in order to accommodate some of our facilities. So some of that has to be done too.
Any more questions? Because we
I
really,
think this cleared up.
yeah,
do.
I cannot thank you enough for being here.
No
I
problem.
really- And if you have any questions,
I-
any concerns, feel free to.
I think if we just get a statement from the council that where it's at and what the timeline is, I think that's enough to sell the project to upper management. I really
Scott,
do.
is that something that you can write up and I'll be glad to sign?
Yeah, it would have to be voted on and approved, you just can't sign it.
Oh, I know that. I'm just
Statement
asking.
of intent,
Sure.
line would have to be
I'll be,
voted on approved by the
yeah,
board.
I think we'll be,
Yeah, but it sounds like he needs that, he doesn't necessarily need the formal amendment of the TIF that authorizes the construction phase. I don't think that's, I'm hearing, I don't think he needs that right now.
Just, if it's gonna take him 8 months to move, like, just say, if you in May, and this is just a schedule.
Right.
If in May, you got your utility, or your right-of-way clear, and then just say you gave him notice to proceed, and that you were going to do the whole project by itself. If he gets started, I don't know, June, July-ish, somewhere around there, you're talking 8 months before a contractor could get in, so I'm not sure letting it in October would do you any good, but that's your choice.
I think we would probably go ahead and let it. I mean, there'd be no, and we just have an advantage over, they've been in there for a few months, as opposed to the way we did Hamburg Pike, where the utilities don't come in until the contractor does anyway.
Sometimes contractors, they don't like the winter aid
Right.
project. And you do get better price favorability. We have statistics on that if you let them in January, February. But he's not even gonna be done then, that to me like, so.
Part of our issue will be, even after they get done in May, with acquiring everything, we're gonna have to come back and acquire the additional right-of-ways and pieces, so we can't even proceed with construction. So
you're not
that's,
even gonna be able to get started
right,
away.
right, and that's part of that 8 months time period that I'm thinking about.
But the construction just has, sometime in fiscal year 17, it could be the spring, but it has to let sometime so you don't lose your federal funds.
okay.
And we're hoping to have
Yeah.
right-of-way clear before May.
Yep.
I mean,
And
That's
I
our
just
goal.
go by what the.
sure, I know, that's just our goal.
But it has to be before April 17th. Your money's available until, you could let it
Until when?
Yes,
January, February, March.
right,
I would say March, because even April, if you don't get a state law, I mean, if state law does not allow that bid to be accepted, then you'll have to re-advertise, and then you're too close to
Then
the
the
end of
numbers
the fiscal
risk.
year. So March would be the latest I would delay.
But it sounds like we're on the right track. So
This has been helpful.
it's been very helpful.
Very
Thank
good.
you all so
Thanks.
very much for taking the time to attend this.
We'll help you with anything you need.
Okay.
We know you will,
We know.
and we appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Y'all have any other questions for me about any of this?
I think we're good. We've got
Okay.
another, we're gonna get to our other portion of the,
Oh, on the agenda?
What I heard is,
What's that?
you said
The construction.
the construction part. So I
Give you something that,
3 phases. The last 3 phases, I had a chart, and I put it out, and you said, hey, you said, remember you said that, so I
Is
put it
water and
to
sewer
the next
built
day.
in with the construction
I said,
part?
it's not a
Or
big deal. I said, it's
water,
gonna get more money.
sanitary sewer, is that?
that's an Andy question.
I'm sorry, what,
Design,
Part
water line and sewer line.
The worst part of
relocation?
this project is where it chokes down, they're at press.
Well, is
Everything else realistic.
Vicki, just let me know when you're ready for Dr. Fry to. Sorry, we're running a little bit behind. I apologize.
That's to break it down to.
Thank you all again. I really appreciate
The
it.
first phase saw that $2.8 million, and they keep trying to ask for more money, and some money might roll in for a future phase. But still be sure to finish the project until we don't lose our funding, obviously. Is that what?
Well, that's kind of what I heard.
That's
kind of the questions that I had.
We was
No amount of risk.
Sorry, PCD.
You know,
We was told that if we don't, and maybe less, if we don't pass this false landing and this TIF and commit to it right now, utilities are gonna walk out, and that's not the case.
Are we ready? Okay, Dr. Fry, welcome.
Hi, good to see you all. I want to apologize first because I have a box of reports to bring to all of you that was supposed to be here tonight, and it's not because I swapped cars with my spouse today, and there went the reports. So I apologize for that. We will deliver them to Vicki tomorrow so she can distribute them to all of you immediately when she gets them. So, sorry. First day after a holiday.
All right.
All right, so I'm not going to repeat things we've already talked about in other times that I've visited with you, but I am going to say a few things, and then I'm going to turn it over to the folks who will be communicating with you about this effort from here on out, some of the founding board members of the Homeless Coalition of Southern Indiana. So over the last year and a half, you know that we spoke with a whole bunch of individuals. We had formal interviews, group interviews, we had community forums, 4 in each of the 2 counties. We heard a lot of good stories about things that are going well and services that are provided real well in our community. And then we also heard stories about areas where we need to improve or could be doing better for the homeless in our community. We, according to the pit count, have between 200 and 300 homeless on the streets on any given night, and we know from other conversations with folks, from school counts and from national estimates of how much of an undercount the pit count is, that we probably have more like 600 folks in the area who are struggling with precarious housing at any given time. So in our conversations, we found a really strong commitment to improving how our community meets housing or responds to housing needs. Everyone seems to recognize the human and financial costs of failing to keep people housed, and they also recognize the value of a proactive approach to preventing homelessness and quickly returning to stable housing. So our efforts really focused on those 2 things, preventing people from becoming homeless and quickly returning them to housing. So the plan is not a plan about shelter for the most part, and that doesn't mean that we don't at some point need to assess our shelter needs, but that really wasn't the focus of the effort, as people really felt like we could get more bang for our buck, so to speak, and our time and our effort by reducing the number who become homeless and more quickly returning people to housing. The plan takes the same form as the National Opening Doors Plan and is consistent with efforts across the country that are experiencing great success. So I'm just going to outline here for you a few of the key centerpiece items in the plan. There are lots of other pieces to the plan. When you get your full copy, if you haven't already looked through the copy available online, you should peruse it and kind of read through it and think about what it's going to mean for the city's role moving forward, or for yourself as an individual community member. So first, the plan proposes to establish the Homeless Coalition of Southern Indiana, which is in its formation process right now. That organization will facilitate implementation and provide case management to those not served by existing organizations and programs. So another time when I visited you, I talked to you about the fact that we've got a bunch of people who are not veterans, not victims of domestic violence, not pregnant women, not mentally ill, who don't qualify for the services we have in our community. We need services for them. This organization would meet that need. This organization would also be a place where people know they can go when they run into housing problems. So if they're at risk of losing their housing or immediately upon becoming homeless, this would be the go-to place. You could start there and figure out, they might be referred from there directly to LifeSpring for case management if they're mentally ill, or to Center for Women and Families or St. Elizabeth's, but it would be a place to start. And then, like I said, whatever they qualify for, they would be referred to those places. The next piece would be to establish a shared intake, assessment, and referral system to reduce time and resources spent on these processes and expedite access to services. So the idea is to improve efficiency by making sure that all the organizations in the community use the same intake and needs assessment process. Once someone goes through intake at LifeSpring or St. Elizabeth's or Salvation Army or wherever it might be, it would go into a database system that all of them would be linked to. So then when they showed up somewhere else for their other services, they wouldn't redo their intake. A key piece of that would be a needs assessment that would identify what other services they would be eligible for or that they may need in order to resume stable housing. So if everybody were using the same system, you can imagine how this would be a much easier process. And we could do electronic referrals, so when somebody goes from one office to the next, it's already in the computer, you're in the queue that you need services from that organization, et cetera. So we think that would be a really good option. San Francisco is launching their new navigation center, and they think that they're going to be able to reduce average time spent in emergency shelter from 45 to 10 days. So this kind of effort is happening all across the country, and people are anticipating really sort of strong system responses to it, that it's going to change the dynamics of moving people out of homelessness and back into housing. The plan also suggests that we need to improve transitions to housing from various residential institutions. This includes transition from criminal justice, from foster care, which the foster care program does have a program in place, but if someone at age 18 on their birthday opts out, they no longer have access to that transition program. So we want to make sure that our community's picking up those who maybe opted out at 18, but at 18 and a half realize they really need that help. In addition, those being released from rehab facilities and healthcare facilities. The idea here is that we will no longer, as a community, discharge to homelessness, which currently we often do. Our hospitals both discharge to homelessness on a regular basis. And we want to increase access to affordable housing. This will require partnership of public, private, and nonprofit entities to think through where can the market play a role in providing more affordable housing, where can nonprofit development organizations or local governments play a role in providing access to more affordable housing. Provide either through the coalition or through an existing community agency a day shelter site where homeless individuals can access services and information to help them return to stable housing. Next is to develop a coordinated white flag system so we're prepared for extreme weather and other emergencies. We definitely heard over and over again from folks like we must do better with white flag. You all know that every year in this room you have this conversation about how to respond to white flag. So the idea here would be that the coalition would be part of helping organize a more coordinated effort, so there'd be a plan in place, and that first night when it drops below 35, everybody knows who's supposed to call who and where the shelter will be in each of, preferably one in Jeff and one in New Albany, and that will all be in place so that it's not such a sort of chaotic mess when that time comes. And then finally, to remove barriers to health, mental health, substance abuse treatment, education, and job training to help people remain in housing, and in the event of homelessness, to quickly restore stability. I think the new federally qualified health center here in Jeffersonville is a step in that direction. We've expanded access to health care for those without insurance, and that's a huge move in the right direction. We need to continue to expand access to mental health. And more recently, I'm hearing more and more in conversations, although it did also come out in these discussions, is access to substance abuse treatment. We are severely underserved in terms of substance abuse treatment in this area. We also talked a lot about education and job training and access to those programs. We have good programs in this area. Getting people hooked up with the right programs that will be effective for them is definitely something that additional case management would help our communities do more effectively. And so we're hoping that that additional case management from the Housing Coalition of Southern Indiana, which we're calling HICSI, that additional case management there and a more integrated intake, assessment, and referral system will expedite any job training and education programming. It'll get people into those programs more quickly so they can more quickly move on to their next steps. The plan, as I said, includes a lot of other items. These efforts are going to require significant coordination and commitment on the part of our communities, our local governments, area philanthropies, and our service providers. There's really no silver bullet. But we think there are some key leverage points where if we can move a few of these pieces forward, it's going to start to make a big difference, and we'll be able to build momentum to move the other pieces forward. So with that, I will turn it over to the board members, and then we'll field questions, I think, when they're done, if that's okay. Do you have something immediate?
I just want to applaud you.
Well, thank you.
You've done an amazing, amazing job, and it really touches my heart and the board and your whole team, because I feel like we are finally addressing the issue of homelessness and not just skirting around it or putting our heads in the sand. So I really applaud you.
Well, I applaud all of the people who participated in the planning committee, the task force, and the community members who showed up at forums to contribute to the process. I really just kept track of it all. So thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Kern and Leslie Townsend, two of the founding board members. Leslie's from St. Elizabeth Catholic Charities. Kelly is a local realtor who participated in the task force, the planning committee, and attended every community forum, and has been an advocate on homeless issues in this community for a long time.
I was actually going to summarize if Melissa wasn't here. I think Leslie actually probably, unless you have questions of me or something, Melissa did a great job summarizing, so I don't think you need more from me.
Fabulous. I brought a business plan. I brought 9 of them. So my name is Leslie Townsend Cronin, and my real job is I'm the Social Services Director of St. Elizabeth Catholic Charities. I've been involved in Melissa's studies and had some input, and kind of what we've rolled out of the end of that is before we can do all the great stuff that she's got in her plan, we really need to put together some sort of starting point, a grounding point where homeless families or families that are at risk of homelessness can start. So we came up with the Homeless Coalition of Southern Indiana. I also will say that I'm also the president of the Southern Indiana Housing Initiative, which is called SIHE, which anybody who has any kind of HUD funding, ESG funding, they all have to be a part of that entity. And we also have local providers that over the years have kind of been in and out in being a part of that. We have local people who are involved in the homeless community that is also a part of that. So what I've got for you today is the business plan that we have. And what it is the vision that we have for the Homeless Coalition of Southern Indiana is that we will start out with one executive director and eventually work into a case manager who's going to start with feet to the ground working with the homeless in our community. We really feel like that we have got a good idea of what the services we have in the community are, but we don't really know how effective they are and if they're really reaching the population that needs to be reached. And so with the Homeless Coalition, this person would do a lot of the upfront case management as well as continue to work on establishing more funding, making sure that, kind of starting this from the ground up. And then pretty soon after that, we'd have a case manager who would be able to provide all of the case management for the families. What we're doing at this point is also, like Melissa mentioned, it would be the central point intake, central access endpoint. Access, yeah. Anyway, you guys know what I'm trying to say. Where people would be able to come, they would have a one-stop shop. So they can come and they can find out, okay, I'm going to go to this one place, and I know if I'm appropriate for Life Springs, I know if I'm appropriate for Center for Women and Families, or maybe I'm not appropriate for any of those, and I'm not really homeless, but I know that in a month I'm going to be evicted and I need services. And so this person can actually, or this entity, this agency can actually provide that for that person, whereas there's nobody else in the community that can provide that at this point. So what we're looking at is, if you look in the back of the business plan, we have laid out just kind of some rough estimates of what we think we're going to need, and we average it out to be about $300,000 a year. We have gone to the New Albany and asked them. So what we're thinking is that the cities can fund half of it, then we're going to ask private foundations for the other half. We have been to the city of New Albany, and they have loosely committed to $75,000 for the next 3 years. We have an appointment with Clarksville on September 21st to see what they would be willing to commit, and so that's what we're presenting here is a commitment of $75,000 for the next 3 years to help us support this effort. And we also have other foundations. We have Blue Sky that is looking to help fund us. We're going to look at Ogle as well as Horseshoe. So now I'm going to open it up for questions. It's a lot easier.
75,000, is that a total 75 or 75 per year?
Per year for the next 3 years.
And who's going to be responsible to do the bookkeeping and to manage so we can have audits of this money?
So so SIHE has agreed to be the fiscal agent. They are a 501c.
And where are they from?
SIHE is the Southern Indiana Housing Initiative. And so what that is that it's just a group of providers. So there's
St. Elizabeth is a part of it, Life Springs is a part of it, Blue River Services is a part of it, Center for Women and Families, and then there's just other providers that come in and is actually set up as a board. So there's the board president, treasurer, and secretary, and they have committed and voted to assisting with the coalition until there becomes an executive director and 501c is established as well as a board. And we are in the process of putting in our articles of incorporation to become a true board. We do have a commitment from a law agency to help us do the 501c status. So as of right now, it would be under the SAHI, which is already a 501c agency.
They're going
Yes.
to be fiscally responsible for this and answer
Yes.
the questions. And
If I can interject, Lisa and myself, we were able to meet with Leslie and Kelly and go over some of this preliminarily just a couple weeks ago, I guess it was, and try to get an overview. And I've reviewed it, looked at it, and we've talked a long time about at some point we have to make a commitment to trying to address this. I think this has certainly been looked at extensively, and there's a good plan here. The people that are part of the board and at the table, part of SAHI, I know many of those from being in the not-for-profit world, and they're very reputable. And I think having all these folks pulled together is a good approach. And I know from a budgetary standpoint, this year we have tried to make the comments using some of the gaming monies that we have available. In the past, we've put most all that towards River Stage. And we talked to Paul, and we said, well, we may need to hold back 75 of that for another project. So we tried to identify some of the money that's already there that could be Jeffersonville's match. And I know we specifically, Lisa and I specifically commented about it doesn't need to be a Jeffersonville project. It needs to be the other communities need to have buy-in. And I appreciate them, Leslie, addressing that and going to the other communities and having that, all of us have skin in the game. And I also think that making a commitment, you've got to allow it enough time to get off the ground and rolling, and you can't just say, well, 1 year, let's see what it is. 3 years is I think a good approach to it. And so I just want to share some of that background information with the rest of the council members that we've kind of, I won't say vetted it, but we've gone through it, thought it through, and asked a lot of preliminary questions already, and got good answers from my perspective.
Just to add to that, I know that was what I was very impressed with both Leslie and the knowledge that Kelly and they have. Like I said, everybody they brought to the table, I don't think they could think of another person that's more, to bring into the scenario, bring to their table and be part of their board. And then the idea of Dr. Fry commented earlier, to streamline the process, and not only that, to get somebody help before they even actually are homeless. I mean, they're looking at all angles and all approaches to this, and I mean, I just can't commend you all enough. I'm just,
well, the 300,000 operators is 150,000 per year. Well, they're asking for Jeff and Clarksville to pay 75 each. The town of Clarksville, I know they haven't spoken to them
Jeff
yet.
and New Albany.
I know they haven't spoken to Clarksville yet, but really, they should be part of that match.
we agreed.
Yes.
So
That was one of the first
Jeff and
things
Albany to pay the full match, 150,000, and Clarksville's not. And I think we've had this discussion on other things that we've been involved in the past. It seems like they've always been allowed to skate, and I know they get gaming revenue as well as we do. I think they need to put some, if we're going to put financial skin in it, I think they need to put it in too.
And I don't disagree. I think that's a good question for Leslie is do you know yet what you're going to ask Clarksville? And if Clarksville, says, we'll bring 50 to the table, then does that reduce the amount that Jeff and New Albany get to pay, or have you thought that through yet, Leslie?
We've been pondering that a little bit. We were trying to identify the communities that we felt like had the most services and had the most homeless and had the most, like you say, skin in the game. I will say that if we can get Clarksville to commit to that that money, that I think that would reduce not necessarily what the commitment of New Albany and Jeff would be, but maybe the commitment of what we have to ask for the community foundations. We don't know right now what this is going to look like. We don't know if the $300,000 is going to be the right amount of money. We don't know if it's going to not be enough money. So what we're doing right now is we're just coming out and asking this, and whatever Clarksville is able to give to us, we're hoping that we can just kind of add those together and then ask for the additional money from the foundations who haven't committed at all. We have Blue Sky saying that we would like to help, but we don't know what that commitment's going to be. We don't know what Ogle, if Ogle or Horseshoe would even be willing to fund that. So if we can get the communities to fund this themselves, get the cities to fund this, that would be less money, the grants that we would have to go after in the initial interim. I would say ideally after 3 years, we would be able to be self-funding, and it wouldn't be such a push right now to get this money today on the table.
What do you mean self-funding? By fundraisers, where are you going to get your money to be self-funding?
So when I say self-funding, I think there is going to have to be some buy-in from the cities in order to do that, and that would really be the executive director's job to say who can we get as grants. Right now we have the MOU agencies, so I guess I need to lead off with the fact that we did have 6 MOU agencies sign a memorandum of understanding saying that they support this. So that was Life Springs, Salvation Army, Center for Women and Families, St. Elizabeth's, and the 2 housing coalitions. And so we're hoping that right now those are the board seats. We're hoping in the future there's going to be a true board who can do the fundraising, who can do the asking for money, writing of the grants, and people who would be willing to donate to this effort. But right now we just don't have that. So I would think that probably there will always need to be some city buy-in to this. But ideally it wouldn't be, if in the future it wouldn't be the $75,000 a year. Right now that's just to help us get off the ground.
I got a couple questions.
Sure.
Your first phase is going to be a day shelter. Is that correct?
No, the first phase is to get case management. Let's work with the homeless. We don't really know what services we need. I know that we are looking at a day shelter in the future, but right now we need to figure out, let's get the homeless, those services, that case management, let's get them where they need to go, and figure out what truly we need in this community.
Where are we going to do that at? We have any idea where that case management will take place?
Very good question. We do have the New Albany Housing Authority as well as the Jeff Housing Authority who have tentatively offered some space. They're looking at that. We have some feelers out there. We don't have a set space right now for that.
Okay. And I guess my question was stemmed from, you've got $80,000 for your first year in salaries and benefits. And then on the day shelter for the first year you have $0. Is that because?
That's because in the first year we're not focusing on the day shelter.
On the day shelter, okay.
Right.
All right. And then for the day shelter though, in the first year you have $125,000 in capital.
This might be a good Mark question.
I'm just trying to.
No, that's okay. He's the one that really kind of put a lot of thought into this.
I'm sorry, what?
If your first phase is going to be, I don't know what you called it, the processing more or less, and your staffing, you've got enough in there, it looks like $80,000 the first year for staffing, and you're saying that you're not really going to operate your day shelter the first year or concentrate on it, but you have a $0 staffing for the first year, but you have $125,000 in capital in the first year.
Yeah, like Leslie said, the 6 agencies that joined together that signed the memorandum of understanding really took the plan and said, this is what we see, but we're going to release it to a board. They're going to have to make those decisions, and the very first decision is hiring an executive director. This was as we saw it 2 months ago. A day shelter may not be the solution. We may pull that out, but the board will pull that out based on once we get a coalition in place that's working on centralized intake and case management, is there a real need for a day shelter, and are there other options to do that? At that time, this was showing if we had, the coalition had to operate the day shelter, and that's where case management and the director and all that was that's representing that. We don't really know that is the solution, and we'll release that to the board to make those calls.
Okay. All right. Just got a couple others. In other communities, and you said you had looked at other communities, and you said after 3 years, like our buy-in wouldn't be that much. are at the level that it is.
Can't guarantee that, but that's the plan.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, from previous experience in other municipalities, if you're looking at 50% today, what are we looking at in 3 or 4 years? Because our budgets are getting tighter and tighter and tighter. So, we want to be able to sustain this, and I think it's very, everybody here thinks it's very important, but we got to be realistic about what's expected from the city.
You want to speak to that? Or you want me to speak? The only thing I would say about that is, one, we're not pulling down all of the federal money that we can right now. We are also not getting the support of national funders at all right now, and lots of communities have organizations that rely quite heavily on additional federal funds and on national foundations. So we really haven't tapped very much yet in this community, and I think there's real potential for us to do a more effective job tapping those resources if we have staff to do that work. Right now, all of our organizations that are trying to piece this together, they got to keep their own boats afloat in tough times, and so I think, part of what we need is a chance to get somebody focused on getting those additional resources into this community. And I also want to quickly say about the case management, part of why we're pushing so hard on that case management first and wanting to fund that position, our shelters are completely overcrowded. You know that our general population shelter is very overcrowded, and so one of our top priorities that came out of every conversation was to clear the backlog. And that's why that comes before the other steps, is that there are people who've been in our general population shelter for far too long.
And I guess that goes into my last question, and I promise. What do we do with the shelter that we have now? And we don't want to take all of their funding away, and then I think they average 80 to 90 a day. We still have to house those people. We don't want to take all the funding away. I mean, as far as I know, we really don't support them as a city. We don't give them, we have in the past, we've loaned them money, we've forgiven debt, we've, different things like that, but we don't budget anything for them. So if you're going to take 150,000, say, philanthropy dollars out of the community, does that affect them?
None of the agencies that we've gone to for money, except for the city of New Albany, are currently funding the shelter, to my knowledge. To my knowledge, none of the folks that we've sort of identified as being potential funders, except the city of New Albany, are in any way funding Haven House.
And my only concern is, we don't want to do something and then have an unintended consequence, because it seems like we always run into those.
Well, it's going to be they're going to be competing maybe for the same dollars.
Well, but I think that's true, but what they're saying is they're not taken out of the same pot that the other
With
shelters
the exception of the city of New Albany. But the other thing that I would say about that is, if we are able to get more case management, the ideal would be to reduce the population there, which would in turn reduce costs at that shelter as well.
Is there enough low-income housing, or whatever you're going to call it, subsidized housing, well,
those are two different questions. So we have a lot of subsidized housing in this area. We do not have a good supply of low-income housing that is not subsidized.
Okay.
That gap is a problem, and one that I really think, we've got developers and private property owners, as well as, New Directions nonprofit housing organization and our housing authorities, where I think we could do a really effective job bringing people together to brainstorm how do we respond to that. One of the things that's in the report, which I wish you had in front of you, is an explanation with some infographics and a table that sort of shows that we don't have enough affordable housing for low-income people, considering how many people are low-income in our area. We have a mismatch between the supply of affordable rental housing and the number of people who are earning at the level that need affordable rental housing at those low rents. So that mismatch has got to be addressed. But I think that's going to take multiple parties at the table working together, and potentially working also with HUD on development projects that may be available to the community. Anybody have any more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's good, too.
I'll second.
Workshop meeting adjourned.